Welcome to Todd Talks. I am joined today with our community manager, Lauren Urban, as well as our lead writer, James Haeck. James Haeck, notably, has written a lot of D&D books. You want to list off a few of those?
The two big books I've done recently are Explorer's Guide to Wildmount, along with Matt Mercer, James Introcaso, and Chris Lockey, and Descent into Avernus, along with a whole host of other folks.
And Lauren Urban is on almost every D&D stream on Twitch on the
No.
planet.
No,
Yep.
that's totally
She's
not
either
true.
in it or she's in chat.
Nope, that's still not true, but I try. I try to be in as
Nope.
many as possible.
I said it.
Listen.
We're on
All
the
right.
internet right now. It's true.
I mean, you are my DM, so I guess if
That's
you say
true.
it's true.
Everything that's on the internet is true.
Absolutely.
Clearly. So moving on, let's talk about how to play D&D. I think good time to talk about how we do it. And it's been about 30 years since I started playing D&D, so I am a little rusty at learning D&D in that regard. What are your key steps? Because I know we all have introduced new players, even this year and even as early as a few months ago, to Dungeons and Dragons. What do we say to people to ease them into learning something like D&D? Because I always hear that people always think it's to learn the rules, and that's not necessarily the case.
It's a very complex issue. Everyone has different challenges learning how to start playing D&D, right? It depends kind of on what background you're approaching the game with. Like when I started playing D&D, I was raised on a steady literary diet of Tolkien and J.K. Rowling and C.S. Lewis and kind of the classic fantasy books. And so I kind of knew what fantasy was, and I was getting into it. But there are people who didn't grow up reading fantasy. There are people maybe who grew up playing like computer RPGs like Fallout or Elder Scrolls, or you were playing Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy and Fire Emblem. So everyone comes in knowing something a little bit different. Do we want to kind of assume a baseline for people when we're talking today, or do we want to split things up a lot?
I like the idea of talking about splitting things up because you bring up a really good point in that why people haven't played D&D but want to, or when you're trying to convince people to, their challenges are different. Yeah, there's a rule complexity, but I also have had people or I've watched the streams and it looks really involved and like you have to have all of this background in theater and have to be DMing for 30 years. Or people are worried about being able to find a game online. So I think there's a lot of different reasons why people who want to play haven't played, or you might need to help convince, and why they have that barrier is different. It's going to be a different reaction for, well, here's how I can help you get past that barrier. Because if it's just I can't find a group, well, let me offer you 10 different ways to find a group, or let me run a game for you, or something like that. If it's I'm afraid of the rules, it's all right, well, the good news is if you get the rules wrong, it's not that big of a deal, and then maybe you have to walk them through character. So yeah, I think it's a good idea to talk about all those different ways that people have that barrier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrified now. That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of different ways.
Yeah. So I've always, growing up, the first person who ever ran me in the D&D game was my brother. We were on vacation visiting my grandma, and I bothered him. I begged, I pleaded for years for him to run a game. It wasn't until I was 8 that he finally did. It was a one-off. I was playing a cleric because that's the only thing in first edition that could actually survive anything. It mainly the whole game was me making the character, and then we played for probably like 20 minutes.
And that's a common problem in new D&D groups. Where's the fun of playing the game, right? What part?
Yeah. How did each of you get introduced to D&D then?
Well, if we don't talk about me playing by myself with the original Red Box when I was super young, I got introduced in 4th edition. I had a giant gap in my D&D knowledge. I just moved out to Seattle, and 4th edition had just come out, and they were doing all the different events at you could go to a local game store and find a game to play. And I had no money and very few friends. And I'd been listening to the Ack Inc. podcast and I'd wanted to play. So I just showed up. And a very nice man who is helping run one of the games is like, all right, I'll help you walk you through character creation. Here's the sheets and everything. And I'll get you joined in with this game. And I played a cleric because nobody else was playing cleric. And to this day, I'm still, what do we need? Oh, we need a cleric. Okay. So yeah, I had a cleric, and fourth edition was super crunchy. So it was all figuring out all the numbers and everything. And the last thing I thought about was my character's name. And so that's why my first, and he survived the death of the store, because sadly the store went under long before my character and our group TPK'd. But that was my first encounter. And fourth edition was way more crunchier than fifth edition, way more tactics and less about the role playing. But it was super fun, and I had a lot of fun. And our group migrated away from the store when it died and went to several different departments, including mine, despite the fact that there were 9 of us at one point. And we made it work and continued from there. How about you, James?
My story also involves a game store closing. It seems to be the fate of all game stores, tragically.
Yeah.
But I started playing in high school. I started playing in 3rd edition, even though it was 4th edition era. Because those were the books that my friends happened to own. And so I started playing, let's see here. I played for about 2 or 3 games before the group kind of fell apart, and I became Dungeon Master to rope them back together again, because it sounds like my friend who knew how to play D&D and taught us all how to play D&D was kind of improvising everything as he went, which is perfectly legit. But he ran out of steam and school got busy, and I was like, I've got a story, and I jumped in and I filled the vacuum. And that group stayed together for years and years and years, and kind of warped and mutated as people dropped in and dropped out. And I played with that group in some way, shape, or form for something like 8 years, I'm pretty sure.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a great start.
Yeah, so local game stores have always been a good place. But now online, there's a lot of tools. Facebook, in particular, there's a huge D&D community on Facebook.
Several, yeah.
That allow their players. We have the D&D Beyond forums right now. We've got Discord. So there are a lot of ways to find groups. I think we'll probably move forward, assuming that you have found a group.
Yeah. Before we move on from finding a group, I wrote an article about finding a group right at the beginning of this year, not knowing that sooner or later, a few months later, we would be all stuck inside looking to start a new group. So if you just Google search how to find a D&D group, D&D Beyond, you'll find this article from back in January. And that includes a lot of info about finding people in game stores and stuff, which might not be useful now, but there's info about like using forums and tools to find people online from there too.
And even though you can't find people in person, you can still use those same social connections. You can still contact your local game store and see, are they still running stuff online? You know, with the idea that once you can get together in person again, you'll meet up at that game store. Talk to your friends and family, especially for younger players. If you're looking for a group that's going to be kid friendly, ask them about their school peers, ask them about, you know, their siblings or any cousins or nephews or friends or anybody that they've got in their immediate social group who already kind of get along. Find out if you're enjoying watching a show online, find out if there's a community for that show online. Critical Role is the gold example of there are critters everywhere who are looking for groups. Go find a critter community. But if you are a fan of a show or a podcast, chances are there are other fans of that show and that podcast who also want to play D&D, and they probably want to play it in the same way you do. So that's a built-in connection right there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of good lessons also in watching some live stream shows and learning to play D&D. Like you do absorb kind of the cadence, that the concept of everyone sharing time when you're playing a D&D game becomes very apparent. Just watching Critical Role, there are like classic examples I would show in a classroom, right? Making sure someone had their moment to do a particularly tricksy thing with a hag, you know, where all players and the Dungeon Master are all sharing space and time and allowing everyone to have their moment. and it should be done, but you still don't know what D&D is until you play it.
Mhm.
Like you can't.
There's something really special about having actual play shows being so popular, uh, that even in the middle thousands, like I did not have, because unless you know someone who's played D&D before, when you start playing, no amount of reading the Dungeon Master's Guide and the Player's Handbook will really prepare you for, like, what is it actually like to run. Player's Handbook starts with this kind of example of play that's like a script and the people talk, and like no one talks like that. Like it's a good start. Like it gives you kind of an idea, but uh, if you watch these actual play shows, you get it for real. You see what people do when they play D&D. And like Critical Role is pretty theatrical, right? I doubt your gaming group will be quite as in character or quite as focused as those people are, because they're still running a show. Uh, if you don't mind going to a different edition I ever saw was really interesting. It was a Chris Perkins show. It was in fourth edition, and he was running an introductory adventure for the writers of Robot Chicken.
Oh
Oh, that's
yeah.
right.
That was
And
a yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it's a bit hard to recommend now because it's a different edition of the game, and so you don't learn how to play quite as well. But the really remarkable thing about it for me, as someone who's learning to be a dungeon master, is that in addition to just and like I think an hour and a half long actual play, there's a DM commentary reel for that as well. And you can all find this stuff on YouTube. Chris Perkins just sort of voices over the entire thing again, talking about what he was thinking about in every single moment as he was DMing. And it's like being able to read his mind, which, when you've got a mind as fantastic as Chris Perkins, is worth its weight in gold.
That is very interesting. Now I
Mm.
want to do that for Beyond Heroes, actually. People will be surprised, like, no, I made all this up, and no, I threw all this away. Like, I think that's like a healthy thing to know as a dungeon master. If you're thinking
Yeah.
about running D&D, do not get overly precious over to your plot.
Mm.
You are sharing a story with the rest of your players, and you may come up with the coolest Westworld plot that's ever happened, and you gotta be willing to let that die. That's why you want to avoid railroading people, because the most fun thing about D&D is it doesn't have to be a movie where everything has to happen at a certain time. It doesn't have to introduce these characters. You can say, you know what, we're okay with that town burning to the ground. You know what, everyone was rude to us, we don't need to be part of this story, and go on another adventure, become a bunch of pirates or whatever, because that's D&D. It's got way more freedom than even any video game that you could play. And that's how it does also ruin me for entertainment personally,
Mm.
very often. So it makes
Yeah.
me like, why can't Redemption is a great example of a game that like constantly punishes me for being evil, and we all know I'm evil. And that's so limiting and boring to me. Like D&D could be just about anything.
Yeah.
And the kind of the double-edged sword of all these live play shows, I think the good thing is that they show the breadth of D&D. Do you want a actor focused, heavy,
Mm.
crunchy, a role-playing game? Do you want a dungeon crawl, and where no, we're not really going to talk that much, but we're going to kick in all the doors and destroy all the monsters? Do you want something in between? Do you want political intrigue? Do you want something, you can find nowadays, you can find a stream or a podcast that is the flavor of D&D of your choice, which is awesome, but it can feel like, wow, to be a dungeon master requires omnipresent, and it's not that way at all. and
No,
and so the more behind the scenes you can get is the best.
I don't know about you two. I have what I feel like I'm getting better at now is I make a very complex evil character who has a set agenda. I push them forward. They have an agenda, and that agenda is enough to basically cause plot lines to happen for the next like 10 episodes. It
Mhm.
may be minor stuff, but recently we dealt with this with Lauren Urban's character or Akira, and that became pretty much the whole, so far the campaign has been dealing with the ramifications of one moment by
Yeah.
an NPC.
Well, that's a natural way of building campaigns, and it's a way that fair agency without plopping their story right on top of the players, because it gives characters agency too. Every character interaction with the villain twists the plot a little bit more. And like
Well,
this is exactly the thing that changed D&D storytelling from dungeon crawling to stories in Ravenloft, when
Yeah.
Tracy Hickman made that Strahd the center of the entire campaign. Yeah, where is he?
yeah.
Well, I'm looking at my painting of him I have
Well,
on my wall.
I'm gonna out how to find a D&D group, and then we kind of naturally evolved in creating a campaign.
Mm.
And I think before we get into how we became DMs, back to that beginning player of like, all right, we've walked you through how to find a game. What's the next to play with? What would you recommend to young impressionable you first starting out as a D&D player?
Well, I mean, it's the same recommendation I would present players. What do you want to put out in the world, right? Like, what do you want to explore? And figuring out the character you want to play is kind of tough, because sometimes you don't know until you play that character. I have rolled up characters, I'm like, I'm so excited. And then I hated that character. I think when it comes to like D&D, for me and from what I've seen, sometimes it's good to look at stories that you love or movies that you really enjoy and characters that you kind of aspire to be, or ways that maybe you aren't in real life that you can potentially explore. It's great escapism. But you can also learn, like, you know, if you're very shy and you decide to play a bard, man, you're probably going to walk out of that different at the end of that campaign, right? Like, you're going to be a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think having that conversation, once you found a dungeon master in a group, finding kind of your spot in that group and sharing time and realizing like, okay, I really like being sneaky and deceptive, or stealing gold, or I really like fighting, and I don't like a lot of role play, but I love like hitting things with swords and rolling tons of dice. You know, if you like rolling tons of dice, play a druid. But yeah, you know,
Or a rogue.
Yeah,
Or a rogue, or a paladin.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
a wizard, or I mean, listen,
Wow,
there's a
there are
lot
a lot
of
of classes that let you roll a lot of dice.
Just not
Yeah.
warlocks.
even a warlock sometimes.
1d10, 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 1d10.
It's a
Eldritch
lot of
Blast joke,
dice,
everyone.
just like once at a time, whereas
Yeah.
Fireball is just all at once. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love the second talk to your DM, talk to the other players in the group. Even if role play isn't your thing, I'm talking about like ask them, what are you interested in playing? What excites you about playing? And then tell them what excites, you know, share that information with your players before you play. Find out what annoys other people and let them know what
Yeah.
annoys you. You might not know that when you start, and it's okay 3 sessions and be like, you know, I didn't say this 3 sessions ago, but don't feel like you need to create a well-rounded character with a 3-page backstory right from the beginning. Come up with, you know, a race and a class and a couple of stats and go for it. That's fine. Or if you want to come up with a book-long backstory, that's fine too. Whatever
Yeah.
makes you happy. But either way is fine. If you want to just jump right in and figure out your character as you go along, that's just as fun as having a character that then you can start from and change as you go.
Yeah. I have so many things all competing for the #1 spot in my head for players and DMs, and I just need to decide on something and say it. And
Well,
I
start
think,
with players.
yeah, I'll start with players, and I feel like this transitions well, so I'll say it. And it's, as a player, the best thing you can be is in love with your gaming group.
Yeah.
It's great to love your character and be interested in your character's story, and making sure that you have that, you know, sort of almost self-centered interest in your own story is really good at making you want to come back to the table week after week. But the thing that will make you have fun while you're playing D&D is being the #1 fan of everyone else around the table. Because if you find that ability within yourself, you're not just kind of waiting for your turn to happen when you know, someone else is doing something. You're not just on your phone, you know, kind of, when do I get to say something next? When do I get to attack next? Cast a spell next? you've got front row seats to the best story you could possibly imagine being told by your favorite actor, who are your friends right there. And that just transforms the entire D&D experience. It took me a long time to really learn that, because dungeon masters can get really kind of bogged down in their own thing all the time. You're so focused on the story you're trying to tell that you forget that your players are doing an amazing, amazing job on the other side of the screen.
It's a really good point, because I think something invariably that causes a lot of people to become dungeon masters, sometimes they're dungeon masters that are too focused on their story and not focused on the characters enough. It's a mistake every dungeon master will make and shall make again.
That was me, and it's going to be me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
Every time I think I'm not going to do it, I do it. And it's not fun for me, actually, ever. Like you're like, oh, it's way more fun. There's nothing better as a DM when you just watch your players just talk and you have nothing to do. Then you have accomplished something truly wonderful, because you just get to watch everyone bicker or
have fun or role play,
yeah.
or whatever it is that they're doing. Interact. Watching other people interact that's a core fun of D&D, whether it's interacting with killing a monster or interacting in a role-playing sense.
Be the dungeon master you wish you had. Give the players opportunities to be themselves, to express who they are, to do the thing that they do. If you've got a rogue in the party, that rogue wants to do rogue stuff. I mean, they might want to do paladin stuff. I don't know. but
then offer them the chance to turn into a paladin.
Yeah. Then allow for the multi-classing rules. And I think that's really key for new players. I think this is a good moment to maybe move over to figuring out your character is really important, but I think that does come with time, especially your very first time. Role playing can be very scary until you start doing it, and if you look around the table, you're going to see the other players kind of giving you that encouragement, giving you energy, involving you in the game. It's a really kind of a trust exercise in a big way, but you will learn your character by hook or by crook. Like you're going to know, like, things are going to happen to your character too instantly that'll codify who they are as a person, right? Just like when you watch a movie and you see a character have a particular scene, that can alter the framework for how you see forward. Do not be afraid about the rules is my big gripe. Everyone's scared of getting something wrong. They're scared that they are maybe a fake player, or they're not good enough to be in a game if they don't know the rules, and that's not true. I forget the rules still.
Everyone does.
Everyone forgets the rules.
Jeremy Crawford pulls out the DMG to look up stuff all the time, and he wrote it.
The rules are a guideline. They are like a skeletal structure, right? They're not the flesh and the bone. I mean, they are the bone, but they are not the flesh and muscle for what makes the game fun. It could just make sure things don't get too crazy, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, don't worry about asking for help with the rules. Everybody at the table wants you to have fun and wants you to succeed, and so ask and give permission to someone else to help you, because sometimes a lot of us don't want to jump in and be like, hey, maybe you want to hex that person, because we don't want to be that person who plays your character. But if you ask, we're more than happy to give you some advice or to help, because we want you to succeed. And when it comes to role playing, if you have that moment, you're like, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to say, that's fine. My go-to when I'm unsure what either my character would do or what to say, is ask questions. Ask the other people questions, ask the DM questions in character. Ask what the other characters want to do in character. Always, because someone at the table will have an idea or be itching to say something, and you'll ask and give them permission to then say something. So ask questions of your players when you need help, and ask questions of your characters when you need their help too.
Yeah. Being suboptimal is actually my favorite thing in D&D. I know we've got a lot of great resources, a lot of videos about how to make like the ultimate paladin. Like, I'm a hexblade / paladin, and I can do double smite, and then I have no more spell slots, but I've killed the enemy in one hit. That's great, but that's not for me. And that's ultimately becomes very boring very quickly. Not being optimal, and one of the best moments ever when you're playing D&D, at least for me, is when you are doing the thing that is not the wisest thing because you
Mm.
know that's your character. Like, that's all I play, I think. I don't know that I've played a character who's ever done the right thing.
Or try to do the right thing, but know it's in the way that you're not good at. It's like, all right, this is the
That-
right thing to do, but I suck at this, so here we go. And sometimes, most of the time, you're gonna fail, and it's gonna be funny. And then every once in a while, you roll really well, and then it's inspiring.
That's what I think really good stories are made out of. It's characters who want to do the right thing, but maybe their definition of right is at odds with other people or the society they're in. Like that's what causes the conflict. I love characters that actually are pretty powerful, that are pretty optimized. Maybe not like full-on power gaming, character optimization
Balanced.
forums level of strong, but like I want to be able to do the stupidest stuff, or like not stupid, but the most character motivated suboptimal choices, and somehow like by the skin of my teeth pull it off. That feels very pulpy, very good D&D to me.
But chances are, if like the other fun thing about that is, all right, my character is going to make this decision to try this thing, which is the right thing to do, but the wrong person for it. But then now your failure inspires the person. Oh, I tried to do something super dexy, and I'm not sneaky at all, and I suck at this. But now the rogue is going to come up and be like, "I got you." And
right place, wrong time, wrong person. Yes,
exactly.
Good.
And now you've opened up the door for your rogue or whoever to go forth and do the thing and be awesome at it. And so it's, don't be afraid to fail, but sometimes that then gives another person a chance to succeed.
Yeah, because D&D is not a single player game. It's not Skyrim.
Exactly.
It's a party-based game.
Goes back to what Todd was saying about be the biggest fan of your fellow players and your DM.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing because I think we've kind of nailed what makes D&D fun is don't ruin the experience of D&D for yourself by trying to be good at it right away or knowing it. The fun is slowly learning it and being like, if I do this is really cool.
I will agree with that. Yeah.
That's the learning curve is the fun of D&D. So if you're afraid to learn D&D, that's not the thing to be afraid of. I don't know. Gelatinous cubes and Tresks are the thing to be afraid of.
Yeah, there's this kind of sweet spot, this golden point in becoming a D&D player that I think, wow, this idea just came to me. It's like when you're a couple weeks into learning how to play D&D, once you've figured out how do I make an attack roll? What's a saving throw? Once those sort of nitty-gritty details are out of the way, you know the system kind of well. That's when things like the monsters surprise you. You don't know what a gelatinous cube is. You don't know what a thrycreen is or whatever. It's when the magic items surprise you, because who knows what a flame tongue great axe is first time you see one. What's the what are the gloves of missile snaring?
Alchemy jug. This can make mayonnaise. This is amazing.
Yeah.
With you,
because now you've got your sea legs, these are the cool things that grab you, and this is why I think players get so excited for a new edition of D&D, because everything that was old that they're familiar with gets shaken up just a little bit, and they get to kind of go back in with beginner's mind and find the fun again. So actually,
and why DMs love homebrew or love new supplements that come out, because it's more toys for them to play with, and then more surprises for even the most veteran of players.
I'm kind of jealous of new players because your first crit.
There's a lot to be jealous of.
Everyone yells, or the first time you convince an NPC to like not fight, or of some like terrible idea, like that's. You never get over those first moments. First time you meet a gelatinous cube, but you don't really meet them. But or interact with mind flares, or a beholder, or the ye old mimic. Nothing like that. Seeing that happen for the first time and experiencing that, there is a joy into not knowing something very well. It's kind of like a TV series. Like you only get to watch something for the first time once. Like you only get to watch a movie for the first time once, and there's kind of a sadness when you love that movie. It's kind of like Batman The Dark Knight. I'm like, oh man, I still mourn seeing that for the first time because I was so blown away by the performances in that.
But that's why playing with new people is so important, because it's like
Yeah.
watching, it's like when you say, oh, I haven't seen that movie. Oh, that's my favorite movie. We should watch it together. And then sitting there and getting to enjoy your enjoyment for the first time is
Yeah.
almost as good as being new. And it's the same thing in D&D. Bringing new players into D&D and playing with them or DMing for them is the closest you can get to having that experience all over again. It's vicariously living through their, and it's super fun.
What have you had a lot of it? We've all had some experiences introducing new players. What are some things that can bog you down as a player sometimes that you've experienced? Has that ever happened for yourself?
Yeah. Getting bogged down in the rule books is an easy way to suck the life out of a D&D game. Um, there's a certain level of inevitability to that. If you're playing D&D for the first time, you'll have to flip back through to, how does my attack bonus work? Or, if everyone's new, you might have to do that. Maybe your DM knows, and your DM can point to your character sheet and say, oh, well, it's +4 because it's your strength and your proficiency bonus put together. But if you're a DM and you are playing with new players, here's some advice to you. It's make a cheat sheet. It should not be huge. It should be a very, very, like at maximum, one side of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. Honestly, I'd say an index card if you can swing it. Just sort of maybe highlight what their attack bonus is, highlight what their armor class is, stuff like that. Those very, very basic sort of mechanical details. Because the role playing, the freeform stuff, that's going to come naturally. People are going to figure that out. It's and numbers that people are going to want to remind themselves of until it sticks in their brain. And having a sheet will help with that.
Yeah.
I do have a suggestion for the role playing though, because sometimes it seems like it could be easier to figure out, but it also can be way more terrifying, especially for the kind of player you are. And my favorite thing to do with new players is I'll ask them a question and then I'll immediately say, whatever you say right now is true. Because players are afraid of is I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to say something that's not true. Or, new players sometimes have that idea of I'm playing your story, and if I don't follow your story, I'm going to get things wrong. And they haven't figured out that it's our story and we're making it up as we go. No matter how much I might be helping lead it, it's our story together. And so just flat out reminding people whatever you say right now is true.
That's true.
It
It's a
helps
really
lot.
powerful tool. Yeah.
There are instances where players don't know the dividing line completely.
Yeah.
That was the hardest thing for my brain to absorb the first time my brother ran me on a D&D game was I said something like, well, I take out my dagger, and he's like, your dagger isn't on you. I'm like, but it was on me. Well, it's not there. I don't understand what's happening right now. Oh, someone took my dagger. But I want it. Okay, we have conflicting imaginations right now. We've got to meet halfway. I've been used to video games my whole life. That's something to remember as a player. Like the DM does have like set rules, and if they tell you something happened, it did happen. And if you have a good DM, they're not gonna make it up to the point where you have no agency. And it's always good to have an actual role for a lot of that stuff, especially the important stuff. No one wants to die because of an idea.
You talked about player agency a couple of times so far. It's always, in regards to the DM, kind of giving players a choice. I want to give a quick definition of this if you haven't heard the term before. Player agency is a term we use for the player's ability to affect the story and the world. If you are the kind of DM who basically just wants to tell a story all on your lonesome, basically like writing a novel but with friends present, that's essentially a zero agency campaign. If your ultra powerful NPCs are the ones who really matter, then that is a zero agency campaign. We were talking about Strahd earlier. He is a super powerful villain, but things happen in the campaign because the villain has a mind of their own, basically, and the characters can influence what the villain does. And as soon as the players start exerting influence on the story, whether it's because they can convince NPCs to change their mind, or because they can choose to go left in the forest instead of right, or because killing the giant toad at the bottom of Lake Bed Pond or whatever, sets off a chain reaction that transforms the environment. Those are all agency giving elements that really draw players into a campaign. Players check out when they learn that their actions have no influence over the world. When they realize they might as well just be playing an MMO where they turn in a quest and they get a bit of XP and gold, and nothing else about the world changes, that's when players start to lose interest in your campaign.
And I would like to clarify, because I think a lot of people believe that means that your campaign has to be super role-playing heavy, that it has to be, that you're going to invest in what Strahd is doing as far as, outside of what the book says, if you've picked up the campaign book. And if your players and you want to run a dungeon crawl, if you want to run Mad Mage, which sounds like all this is a dungeon crawl, all this is Diablo, except, I'm in charge of the monster agency. Are they going to just blow through kicking down all the doors? Where do they go? What do they do? What puzzles do they solve? What monsters do they kill? Who are they going to negotiate with? How are they traversing this dungeon is just as agency giving as how are they interacting with your political elements in your high stakes political campaign. So
yeah,
you can still run something that is super just I'm playing Diablo and we're kicking down doors and getting loot and leveling up, and that's just as much fun. And I still have agency because I'm deciding where am I going, what am I doing, and how am I doing it.
That's kind of that's like the horror of D&D in some ways, is that if you are in a good game and you have a good dungeon master, you've made choices that led to this possibly terrible thing, right? You chose to go down that corridor. You might have been or maybe you're the one person in the group that was like, we shouldn't head north, and then everyone agreed to go north, and you do, and someone dies, and that's on you guys because that's your choice. You chose to go that way. Or you talked crap to a dragon, which I don't recommend historically. That's the other cool thing. Like, you earn your awful often. Like, that's the best kind of campaign where you're like, well, that was my fault. And there's something joyous in that. Like, I've had plenty of characters die, and I was like, yeah, that was going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in dungeon crawling campaigns, like Lauren was talking about, there are ways to have agency filled and agency less dungeons. A straight line of room A, room B, room C, room D, with one door in and out of each room. That's an agency-less dungeon in its way, right? You can always still interact with monsters, or you can choose how you approach one room, but it's very hard to make choices when you can only go in a straight line going through square rooms with monsters in them. A dungeon with more agency is one with many interconnected rooms. You might think of the landscapes in Dark Souls or a Metroid game, where you can kind of weave back and forth, find multiple entrances and exits to different areas. That often allows you to take a stealthy approach if you want, or to go in, or even to just avoid rooms that you think are dangerous in general. A super duper agency rich dungeon has clues going into each room of what might be inside, right? If your characters heard rumors in town about a red dragon making its lair inside the mountain, then maybe as a DM, you give certain rooms of the dungeon, like maybe the walls have been blackened with ash. And so the players will realize, oh, this is the path the dragon has been through. Maybe we take an alternate route so that we don't face it head on, something like that.
I mean, like, the air is foul this way.
And like,
that kind of moment.
it's harder to do as a DM. It's more work on you, but it's better for everyone involved because the players will be more engaged. They'll have more fun. And also, and this is maybe a bit counterintuitive, you as a DM will be surprised more. And being surprised as a dungeon master when you are the master of the world, it's actually kind of the best thing ever.
Yeah.
And talk to your players on a regular basis about what they want out of the world. Find out what they want, find out what they're interested in, and do it on a regular basis, because what my players wanted a month ago might be completely different now. Their real world lives may have changed.
Yes, their important lesson.
Yeah, and it's really important. Well, the obvious thing, probably no one wants to run a game right now that involves disease. Or maybe someone does. Maybe none of us do, and we just want to escape from it. Or maybe some of us do because I can't do anything about the world, but in this D&D game, I can fix things. And so, talk to your players about what they want and how it evolves. And that way you can give them what they want, maybe not in the way that they want it, maybe in a different way. Maybe it's a surprise when it happens, but like you're making fun together, not just a story. And so it's not a bad idea, because sometimes they're gonna be like, yeah, I'm really enjoying all this, deep-seated plot and all the choices that we have and everything. And I've shown up to games that I've DM'd and had a player be like, it's been a really long week and it sucked, and I would really just like to fireball something. I'm like, okay, I can provide that for you. I am the DM. I can just make fireball worthy monsters happen. And sometimes that's what you need. And sometimes you are about to go into the big boss fight, but you know what? We're not feeling really ready and everything feels a little wrong. Maybe we need a night of rest and chat and snacks.
One real quick thing, if you want to do this on a large scale, when you start your campaign, there's a tool that we call Session Zero. It's not described in the Player's Handbook. It's kind of a more modern, popular thing than when the Player's Handbook was published. Do a Google search for D&D Beyond Session Zero. We've got a really good article on it by Orion Black. And it's basically just sort of a setting of expectations at the beginning of the campaign. Like, what do you want to do in this campaign? Do you like combat? Do you want to fight dragons? Do you hate dragons? Do you have a fear of spiders? Are there role-playing topics you want to touch upon? These are things that all the players can input from the very beginning. That honestly makes it easier for the DM to figure out what to include in the campaign. You don't want to accidentally set off a real deal psychological trigger in someone's mind that will ruin their fun, because not only will that ruin the fun for the players, there are good odds that it will ruin the fun for you and everyone else at the table too, because you have to manage emotions in the real world rather than just having fun in the game, and that can be really challenging. And just like Lauren said, you can kind of return to Session Zero at the beginning of every session, just check in with people and re-up or provide new information. And it just makes D&D more fun.
And as a player, don't be afraid to speak up and say something to your DM. Do not force your DM to be the DM.
Omniscient?
The omniscient and omnipresent. A psychologist and a doctor and a teacher. And you're just a DM. So if you're a player, don't be afraid to speak up for yourself, to speak up for somebody else on positive and negative stuff. Maybe it is, I'm just not feeling well today. Maybe it is, hey, this storyline we've been going through, this is really cool, and I really like this, and can we do more of this kind of stuff?
And if you find yourself in a D&D group where you feel like emotionally uncomfortable of asking for things like that, you might be in a bad group.
Yeah,
you might be in an unhealthy group. Like if you make requests like that and you are mocked for it, no D&D is better than bad D&D. Like, let's get that on the table.
Yeah.
I have a ton of questions from chat. Do we want to start doing
let's do it.
All right. So some of these, we've been collecting them since the beginning of the game. Yes, we've been playing a game since the beginning of the show.
We're on Zoom. We must be in a game.
That's all I ever do on Zoom is play games. So some of these may harken back to the beginning of the conversation, but hey, a group, what's some good advice for starting a group, and how do you psych yourself up to take the first step? So this is, we talked about finding a group, but say you're the person who's trying to put a group together. How is that different than search and rescue?
Well, that's interesting. I did that. That's true. Like, I was so desperate to run a game. I enlisted friends that had never played D&D. I just made sure, and the big hook that I found was, I'm asking someone to learn an entire game system they've never even, played, or something they've never done, maybe. In this case, it's my high school, and I made sure it was of a genre they loved. So in this case, it was actually Dragonlance. They had read the Dragonlance books, but they had never played D&D. And so we were going to actually play the characters from Dragonlance, and that was the hook to get them into D&D. So if you're a dungeon master, looking to start a group, find people who I just want to live portions of Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings or whatever, and hook people in that way. That's always really cool.
I like that for finding a group is not just, hey, I want to DM a D&D game, but hey, I want to DM a D&D game and here's the game I have in mind. So that so that people know what they're getting into and anyone who's signing up is already on board. I like that idea a lot.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I'm sure we have a million questions, so
Yeah,
I don't need
yeah.
to chime in here.
Okay.
We've got from the T-Boys who wants to know, how do you know the best way to customize parts of an adventure? Like if a book doesn't mention a character's race, age, how do you determine the best?
Oh, I don't think. I just do it. Like I love it becomes improvisational because I only have so much bandwidth in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
For adventures like that, I just make it up on the fly. But it is good to consider. I should be, there's some like really positive changes that you can bring to an adventure by changing details to suit your needs. I run a very different Ravenloft game than the so yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
James, I'm really interested in hearing your side of this because you are an adventure writer as well as a DM.
And I have adapted my fair share of adventures to suit my home game. And it really comes down to intuition in a lot of ways, like Todd was saying. Like your gut instinct is probably pretty good. And if you don't feel like you have a good gut instinct, because that can be a problem, right? I feel indecisive all the time. I find the best thing to do is to consume more media, watch more shows, read more books, listen to more music, because those things will inspire you. They will fuel your creative flame, and you'll take inspiration from them. Like if you're copying a video game in how you want to change your D&D adventure, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like it might be a little bit awkward if one of your players recognizes what you've
Right.
been inspired by, but
it might be awkward, but I think they'll also feel really smart in that moment where they're like,
yeah.
wait a second. Wait, hold on. This is Westworld. Hold on.
It is a good point, though. I will say this because when I struggle for my own NPCs, I try, if I want them to have a certain voice or act a certain way, I will think of a character in an actual movie or book, or I'll even think of a character actor, and I will try to do that character. And I will fail, knowing that I will fail at doing an impression. I know that I will create a way. Right? Like,
yeah, you don't actually have to do the impression. You just
yeah.
You don't have to be good at it. In fact, it's an advantage to suck at it. So that can be handy as well.
Yeah.
We've got a question from DeChevy who wants to know, what's y'all's perspective on the best way to DM pickup games or groups versus marathon campaigns? And I was going to jump into this because I do a lot of pickup games. This. Yeah. I love running one-shots. I love campaigns as well, but I run a bunch of one-shots for just everybody all the time. And my perspective is not too much different when running a campaign versus running a one-shot. It's just the time is different, but I'm still going to ask my players, we're still going to have some kind of session 0, even if it's really basic, because I'm not looking for deep character backstory to mine for a campaign. I'm just asking, hey, what are you interested in playing? I'm going to be more interested in running something fun and lighthearted in a one-shot, and that's me personally. I feel like if you've got 2 hours and I'm going to throw a game at you, I want you to come away silly.
Unless I'm in that game.
I'm still throwing a silly one-shot at you. What you decide to do in that game, even if I say, hey, all I ask is that you're not evil in the first 5 minutes. In the first 5. I'm still having some kind of session 0. I'm still thinking about what my players want. I'm coming up with an adventure, and this might be my adventures for one-shots. Like, everybody thinks that they're not going to have enough when they plan a D&D game, whether it's a campaign or a one-shot. You don't need hardly anything. I've made one-shots out of a single line of like, all right, here is a town, and this is one thing that's going to happen, and we're going to go from there. And there's almost less pressure in a one-shot because people who come into that one-shot, because they don't have the expectation of an entire world I can explore, you're offering me a slightly more condensed experience. The buy-in on whatever plot hook you throw at them tends to be a lot higher. So if in the first moment of the game, if I offer unto you a plot hook, chances are you're going to take it, because, we're only playing for 2 hours. So I don't have to come up with 10 different scenarios. I come up with one and then I roll from there. And often I've run one-shots for the same one-shot for 4 or 5 different groups, and they're completely different every single time depending on what they do. So it's the prep is kind of the same, though the feeling should be the same as running a campaign, but then the actual implementation is a lot more fun. But that's me. I like running one shots a lot because the stakes are so much lower for everybody involved.
Yeah, they are, and they do sometimes adhere more to that 3-act structure, and it can be fun when like Beyond Heroes briefly was a series of one shots, and those were like anywhere from aliens. Like I chose a movie at random, and I would make that game, just with like abyssal chickens and one giant mother abyssal chicken or something. And that was a lot of fun as an exercise of like, okay, well, here's the plot of this, and if everyone figures it out, that is also funny. Just like you trying to fake an NPC, you can fake a story, and the story is not going to turn out that way. You can have everyone go through Lord of the Rings, and I promise you, it is not going to end Lord of the Rings. The rogue is going to walk off with the one ring, so it's not going to play out that way. So if you're desperate for a one shot, feel free to rip somebody off. Just don't publish it.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Ripping stuff off for a home game is a-okay. Ripping it off for publication is different. No. But you've all said such good things. I feel
we're the worst.
I feel like you've covered it. I feel like I don't need to add anything else.
You're opting out.
Right,
you're opting out.
You get to answer.
Yeah,
first
you answer first next time.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. I'll take it.
We've got a couple of slightly faster ones probably here. Kenjo wants to know any advice for a novice DM regarding ways to start a game online. And I know we've all talked about this a bit.
Ways to start a game online. I wrote an article on this. How to run D&D online, D&D Beyond. Quick Google search. It's right there. But I suspect the question might be not about like the tools you need to run a game, but like how to actually start an online game. And I think the most important thing you can do to make sure an online game actually happens and actually runs is being very, very meticulous with your scheduling. D&D is already a scheduling logistics nightmare, but if you're playing in person, it's okay for someone to roll in half an hour late because they diverted to the grocery store to buy chips and drinks and stuff like that. But it does not work nearly as well if you're on a video conference call, because every single interruption when you're on a conference is magnified by about 100 times. I could be, if we were in person, Todd, Lauren, and I could all be talking over each other and someone else in the room could understand it. It would be a garbled mess if we were all talking at once here. Nightmarish. So make sure your scheduling is really tight. It might feel like a pain in the neck. It will feel like a pain in the neck, but it will become easier the more you play online, the more people get into that rhythm.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
New question. James Games says, what moment early on in I wonder what else I could do with this insert spell or skill. I'm going to repeat the question. Gabe James Games asks, what moment early on in D&D had you feel like, I wonder what else I can do with this spell and or skill? Basically, what spell or skill did you use in a very different way than what it was written? Because I think that's kind of one of the fun things is taking the mechanics and you kind of have to work with your DM on that, because sometimes some DMs do want to play rules as written, but that beautiful moment where you use a spell or a skill in a way that nobody thought about that's
okay. I'll answer this real quick. I was, because everyone's almost figured out everything. One thing I figured out right away for my character Avron, because he's really tricksy, and the Hexblade was using mirror image and the Sentinel feat, and that made me so happy, and it defined that character for the most modern version of that character, because if anyone hits a mirror image, that counts as a different target. because of the rules as Sentinel, if someone attacks a target other than you that is within 5 feet of you, you can use a reaction to attack that creature. And it was a very like sneaky, especially for a Hexblade who needs to get more of those attacks in than a regular fighter. I was quite proud of that, and I checked with Jeremy Crawford, and he's like, "No, it checks out." I'm like, "I have won D&D." Those are always great moments. I have a teleporter who is similarly OP and weird. He's a conjuring sorcerer who can just teleport like 120 feet every round. That's fun. It's not powerful, but yeah, those moments are great. How about for you, Joey?
Oh, it's such a good question. I started DMing so early. I'd only played one character by the time I started DMing, that all of those really early formative memories about like finding cool combos and stuff like that are editions ago.
Yeah.
And I could think about this question for hours. I'm not sure I have an answer right now.
All right, I got two really dumb answers. They're both fun because my favorite thing to do is not what else can I do with this spell or skill. It's what doesn't this thing talk about that then I get to fill in the blanks. Create food and water. It's 45 pounds of food and water. Somewhere. It just happens. Raw, that's it. That's all you get. You just get 45 pounds of food and water. Does it come in a box or in a bag or in any kind of container? What kind of container is it? Is it a bread bowl? Can I make a bread bowl? What is the
very
flavor?
Lauren.
What is the flavor of the 45 pounds of food and water? Can I alter the flavor? Will you let me roll a performance roll, alter the food? Can I make it all taste like lobster? I love that stuff. That moment in where you're looking at a spell and you go, okay, create food and water. Sure, why not? That's how I'm going to get through the next 5 or 6 days with my party. And then you start to think about bread bowls. It's great.
It's okay. I do have a similar obsession to Lauren's, though,
my
that
God.
is so on brand for you. Monster summoning, the old school version of it. Oh, I'm obsessed with where they come from. I just love the idea of a monster being out in the woods, just disappearing and then showing up because you conjured it, and having other people witness it. Like, there's another adventuring party that's like, where'd my thing go? Like,
Yep.
Like things like that was. I think we did that in Beyond Heroes once, where like you guys stole like the Book of the Phoenix or some magical book, and there was another adventuring party trying to get it, and you conjured it away, and they're like,
"Oh, it wasn't the Book of the Phoenix. It was Alindra." Yeah, I remember talking about. Yeah, they grabbed a book, and then you were like, the camera lingers for a second on a different adventuring party showing up and be like, "Where's our book?"
That's right. I love that stuff. Like, you're affecting the world.
Yep.
Yeah,
yep. Bags of holding make me happy about that all the time.
Yeah.
There's so many questions about a bag of holding. So let me do one more quick question. Luxar5013, what is a good way to introduce consequences that the players are cool with without overdoing it? And my quick answer is talk to your players.
Yeah, session 0. Figure out what your players are like okay with as consequences, because if like you cross the line, suddenly there's like a violation of unstated trust, and that's like bizarre. It's okay to have kind of like surprising results. It's like you don't want to have your game be tepid and predictable, but you also don't want to like violate your players' trust. And so there's a middle ground to be found, and talking with players helps you find it.
Yeah, when I think of consequences, like I'm thinking of things like, oh, sometimes as a DM, my players put me in a rough position. Like I said again, as the example of talking crap to a dragon, I'm like, give your players options to live, as many as you can. But some people are born to die, and
I think there's definitely a difference between your players knowing the consequences and still making the dumb decision versus, you're probably, if you're asking that question, you probably have a good gut instinct about the things you need to talk to your players about. And once again, players, feel free to tell your DM, feel free to, even if you're nowhere near, if you're going to be really upset that your character dies, even if you're nowhere near your character dying, mention it to your DM. Be like,
it's always sad. It's the saddest thing.
It is, but you know what? If you and your fellow players and your DM come to the decision that like, nah, we're not going to let death be harsh, and we don't want to play that kind of game. As long as you all agree on it, like that's fine. Or maybe you want death to be, yep, you're dead and there's no revivification, there's none of that. As long as you've agreed on that ahead of time, then when the consequence happens, it's okay. But once again, it's your game and you're here to have fun.
Yeah.
So make decisions based on what fun is.
That's
On a
something.
slightly, oh,
Yeah,
sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
no,
Todd.
sorry. Yeah, that is something that was never talked about when I started playing D&D, is character death, and basically just happened all the time. It was just like there'd be a hard rain and everyone's characters would die. But now,
Acid,
like,
no,
yeah, I know.
again.
you put so much of yourself into your characters. That's a very good conversation, because I gotta tell you, like, I hate when a character dies. It's the worst. Sometimes it can be really fun for the narrative, but for a lot of people, it's not going to be, and it's not an escape.
Yeah, Todd and I have had this discussion several times
Yeah.
for reasons.
I am a horrible DM. You were
No,
saying,
you're-
Joey?
Oh, I was saying on a slightly different note with regard to consequences. I've read and watched a lot of like storytelling and writing and filmmaking advice, and I just always try and distill it down into D&D advice for my work. And one of the greatest bits of advice is given by classic filmmaker Alfred Hitchcock, and it's on suspense. And the great way to make suspense in movies, he says, is to show the audience what there is to be afraid of. He talks about if you have a scene where two people are talking in a diner and then a bomb goes off, you've created 5 seconds of shock. But if you show the audience that there is a bomb underneath their table 5 minutes before it goes off, then suddenly you've created 5 minutes of bone aching suspense the entire time. So if your players know that there is a consequence coming, you can create an intense and very cool feeling of tension across an entire scene. Like if you're walking on a tightrope, you know that the consequence of falling off the tightrope is hitting the ground or the spike pit or the acid pool or whatever's down there. If you can take that to a bigger picture of like, I know that if I get on the dragon's bad side, he will not only torch me, but also the city 3 miles to the west. That's good tension. That gives people a reason to really try and stay on the dragon's good side because they know what will happen if they fail.
Putting yourself in epic, over-the-top situations is one of the coolest things that you can do in D&D. Just because you're a level 1 party doesn't mean you have to not be interacting with a level 15 CR monster. A monster that is quite easily can destroy you, but you might be able to out-talk him. Or her, or like you may. That's what's great about role-playing, is role-playing you can talk your way out of stuff. D&D is limitless, so let it be limitless. I think that's all the time we have for this Todd Talks. This was an awesome conversation and somewhat therapeutic. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, James Haeck, my lead writer, Lauren Urban, our community manager. We'll be back next week with more Todd Talks. We've got a new show called Building Character, which is Thursday. I will be joined by Jim Davis of WebDM. We will be building characters live using the D&D Beyond character sheet, so you can learn a little bit more about using D&D Beyond's tools and just coming up with fun little character concepts. And also, we got some Discord stuff, don't we? We got some Discord.
Yes, go to our Discord right now for the next 30 minutes and participate in our live game spoilers channel, which is basically the channel that we use to talk about any streams or anything so that there's not a spoiler happening. And in the next 30 minutes, we'll be doing a raffle for a player's handbook on D&D Beyond. So come on by, talk about the show, talk about your experiences being a first-time player or a DM, and maybe you'll win a player's handbook.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thanks so much.